Machinima has officially closed its doors, laying off 81 employees according to reports. Otter Media has finally replied to the event, saying that they didn't know what to do with Machinima and didn't think it would be profitable to continue operation, which means they're basically just shutting it down and deleting everything, which is a little bit unfortunate. But this is not the first event in this chain of events. In fact, this is actually a long chain of events that first started with AT&T acquiring a bunch of subsidiaries from Time Warner. The acquisition ended up including Machinima, even though that was not part of the deal. It was part of those kind of value proposition, I would say, and it was just kind of bundled in with everything, which meant Machinima just basically got grabbed out of nowhere. AT&T then put Machinima under the Otter Media flag, basically another subsidiary of AT&T, and then Otter Media was put in charge of everything that happened with Machinima. Almost immediately, Otter Media ended up putting Machinima's videos into private and basically deleting a bunch of the videos over time. And now a lot of the videos cannot be found on YouTube. They're basically set to, they either are private or they just no longer exist, and YouTube ends up bringing the 404 error. So basically, they just ended up removing everything from Machinima, which was a little bit questionable. Now, a lot of people ended up speculating that they were just going to end up removing the content from Machinima and moving it somewhere else, like one of Otter Media's channels. However, this ended up not being the case, and instead, what they're actually doing is just shutting down Machinima, which is a little bit strange. Apparently, Otter Media did try to figure out what they were going to do with Machinima, but again, they ended up saying it would be unprofitable. This has ended up making a lot of concerns, and the reason why I want to talk about it, and the reason why I wanted to talk about it before when Machinima actually put all their videos to private, is this is a huge kind of content preservation issue to where basically this content is now forever gone, and I think it's worth talking about, and I have a lot to say about it. Michael here with another topic video. Great time to end up starting the actual discussion because it says try again because I ended up just dying. I haven't played this game in a while, so I'm kind of sucking in the background, so I apologize for that. But yeah, like I said, I wanted to cover this topic for quite a while. When Machinima ended up putting all of its videos into private and started deleting them one by one, I was kind of sympathetic with a lot of those people because basically, you know, this is just watching your work just disappear. And although a lot of people would argue that, oh, it was old content, not worth keeping, yada yada, and this is probably exactly what the executives over at Otter Media think, and it's like, it's just old stuff, nobody cares. Quite frankly, preservation of media is great, and it's always good to look back and have a history of things. We're actually running into this with pretty much everything. Preservation of old content isn't something that exists, and internet content specifically is very fragile. Data itself, although we like to look at it as like, oh, it's digital and it'll last forever, it really isn't. Digital media is still physical, and it needs to be on somebody's hard drive, disk, on a film, somewhere. It has to exist in some sense. Maybe even carved into stone. It has to exist in some sense. And this means that when it was getting deleted from YouTube, it was reliant on the actual original creators to end up backing this stuff up. Now, they could end up having a company backup somewhere, and this could not be an issue, and they could sell it off later on. But a lot of that content is just going to be gone forever, and it's only a matter of time before it ends up disappearing forever and just being gone, and with nothing that we can end up doing about it, which is a little unfortunate. And so that has a lot of people concerned. Now, a lot of the original creators that are still end up kind of running today have actually had backups of their stuff, and they're like, oh yeah, we're going to upload whatever we can, and end up having doing those. Now, I don't follow a lot of those creators. I think the only one I'm still subscribed to is Nerd Cubed, I believe, and I believe he ended up uploading a compilation or whatever of all of his old stuff, which I think quite a few of them are end up doing that type of stuff, or there's like archive videos, or some people have actually ended up making backups of this type of stuff as well. Like, because again, this has been a discussion for a very long time. This isn't a new discussion, and with people not liking Machinima in the first place, which I'll talk about in a second, this has kind of been an issue to where people are like, all right, I need a way to end up watching this content or having some sort of preservation of it without Machinima's involvement, because nobody knows what Machinima is going to do, and removing video from Machinima has actually been a thing for a while. Now, Machinima has a long history of doing shady stuff, especially with locking contract with creators and things. I'm not going to necessarily talk about those, but rather what is more relevant is that Machinima is already running into a bunch of problems. When YouTube ended up moving into, and this is why Otter Media was kind of deciding to end up removing this type of stuff, they actually found that a lot of the kind of YouTube changes ended up negatively affecting Machinima, especially when it came down to the sort of kind of, what do they end up calling it? I always forget the buzzwords because I'm not really into the space all that much. But, you know, the content that has to be available for all ages or whatever, the appropriate for all ages, I think is what they were calling it. But they ended up getting a lot of their stuff flagged, which means they weren't making money off of it. And if they aren't making money off of it, they can't continue operation, that sort of stuff. So Machinima was already removing videos because of that, and creators were finding that a lot of their videos and content was just ended up being removed. And some creators were just outright dropped from Machinima just because one or two of their videos ended up getting flagged by the system. Not content ID, not inappropriate, like, you know, actual inappropriate content, like not stuff that's like against the terms of service, but just stuff stuff that was just flagged as inappropriate for all advertisers. And as people probably know by this point, yeah, that happens a lot, even with stuff that is 100% appropriate. You can upload a picture of a dog and it will be like, this is inappropriate, guys. It has furry content in it. So yeah, it ends up being one of those cases where people were just kind of already concerned about it. So people have started this preservation thing long in advance, which is good. And Otter Media kind of makes it even harder for people, because now if you weren't done backing up stuff, or maybe it was somebody, there we go, that's how you use the ability. I haven't played this game in a while, so I'm like sucking in the background trying to figure out how to replay this game. So yeah, basically this has been on for quite a while, but if stuff isn't backed up by now, Otter Media has just shut everything down and kind of gone into it. Now, this is why Otter Media is probably shutting down Machinima in the first place. Machinima probably wasn't all that profitable. They did have quite a few employees. 81 is much more than I thought they would have had. I thought they would have had like 5 guys just they're kind of working there. But again, I don't follow Machinima, so what the hell do I know? But kind of going into that, this is probably why they're kind of shutting it down. Is they're just like, yeah, it's not profitable anymore. Like, there's nothing they can end up doing to making this sort of system profitable, and they don't really want to deal with it. And again, it could have been a possibility of them moving content to another platform. And I think if they had the availability to do so, I screwed that up, then they probably would have, but I don't think it would have been profitable enough for them to do so. Now, again, profitable isn't the sense of, oh, it's making pennies. It has to make a lot of money for these companies to be like, oh, it's making money, guys. Let's actually keep this in operation. So chances are Machinima itself was actually fine. But they were also missing payments as well when it was going into it, and they had a lot of creators under their belt when it came down to actual content stuff, because again, they were an MCM, and I have a feeling that Otter Media probably didn't want to deal with that either. So I imagine, I haven't actually seen anything from them, because again, I don't follow the kind of space all that well, because Machinima isn't necessarily in my ball bag. But again, you know, this kind of goes into the note to where a lot of these creators are just kind of end up disappearing from the thing. And I imagine the MCM is just getting dropped with this closure as well. And now Otter Media just doesn't have to worry about all these creators, especially the creators that weren't getting paid. If you didn't follow the news stories beforehand, Machinima, again, was having trouble paying its creators when it actually came down to the actual payment time of the MCM. So Otter Media probably just saw that, oh, not only is this unprofitable, but we also have to pay all these guys a bunch of money. Yeah, screw that. So that's kind of where that's at. And the acquisition stuff is just kind of unfortunate. I don't believe that Machinima would have ended up shutting down immediately, but I do see that in its kind of near future. I could end up seeing Machinima just not being one of those companies that ends up being profitable for a long period of time. Because again, it was a classic MCM, and a lot of those classic MCMs have either adapted or just ended up closing down themselves, or they got merged. And I believe they ended up trying to merge with Fullscreen, was a rumor back in the when this first ended up kind of coming out, to when the acquisition first happened. They were like, oh, it's going to end up doing this or whatever. I don't want to do the last level. That would be spoilers. So yeah, they were talking about, oh, well, maybe they're just end up doing this acquisition thing because it will just end up going into full screen or something, and they're just moving it to full screen. But evidently, that's just not going to be the case. And so basically, they just, yeah, I think that's kind of why they're shutting it down. Obviously, we don't have that definitive of an answer as to why, but it would make sense, as in all these companies, they're about making profit, and if they can't make profit, of course they're not going to continue operation. There's no sense to, because that's the whole goal of their operation, is to make money. And if they're not making money, why would they care? So yeah, and when it comes down to the preservation stuff, I think it sucks, and I kind of feel bad for the people working in Machinima, because this all happened out of nowhere. They were continuing their operations. They were like, hey, we're working, and we've got the stuff. Yes, they were kind of pissing people off with the whole not being able to pay creators and things like that, but they were actually still operating. And then all of a sudden there was an unrelated acquisition of Time Warner subsidiaries, which basically just led to them kind of getting shut down in the long form, which is just kind of weird. And I think that kind of sucks. And I especially care for the creators themselves, because as somebody who is an artist, preservation of content is really, really difficult. Recently, I was actually looking for some old music that I was actually working on, and I couldn't find it because turns out all that stuff was on an old PC, and that old PC no longer exists. It was literally put in a fireplace, which is a little bit funny. That's a different story. I won't get into it. But yeah, so it just no longer exists, and there's no way to actually get back to it. And data is physical, which means that people have been looking back at a way to kind of end up preserving the styles of content. Now, if you follow those types of creators, a lot of those creators that are still operating have ended up making backups of this type of stuff, or ended up finding other forms of this, as in fans have ended up backing it up, or maybe they have some sort of alternative, like somebody, like again, Nerdcubed had a compilation or whatever that they ended up releasing. So that type of stuff, it's, you know, some of it's still there, but there's a ton of content that was just lost. And I think in general, that kind of sucks. And this kind of reiterates the whole idea that don't rely on an MCM. And I see a lot of smaller creators, especially when they end up starting getting these kind of offers from MCMs, and I've even gotten a few myself, which is kind of strange. I'm not big enough, in my opinion, for that. But I mean, I worked with people that had 4 subscribers that worked with one. But you know, the whole MCM thing, MCMs don't really do anything at this point, and with the YouTube changes, MCMs have become hostile and they end up doing a lot of negative things. Now, the good thing that you can end up having from it is like, oh, maybe they have media that you can end up using, like movies and videos and things like that, like clips that you can end up putting into your content. But that ends up running into a problem. What if you leave the MCM? What if the MCM starts having problems? All of a sudden, you no longer have the rights to use that content, and then your content gets deleted off the internet. How do you get it back? Well, you need, you know, some sort of backup, but the chances are you ain't gonna have a backup without that music, right? Because that's part of it. Backups are huge. Like, let's just, you know, for example, this video here that I'm recording now, it's gonna be 30 to 40 gigabytes in my entire project file. I'm not gonna store 30 to 40 gigabytes plus a final video to output, and that's to say, like, I'd actually, you know, even go back and be able to actually do that styles of stuff anyways. So it's very difficult to actually go back and preserve all this stuff. So even if you wanted to re-upload it, you have that copyrighted content you can't even use. And so if you're looking at MCMs, or if you're wondering why people kind of have a lot of hate for MCMs and kind of question why people even go with them in the first place, back in the day, you needed an MCM to really make business because YouTube was very restrictive. And they've been starting to get more and more restrictive as days have gone on because of the whole, you know, I'm not going to talk about the whole YouTube controversies in this video, but again, a lot of stuff has made it harder and harder to be profitable. But the difference this time, compared to back in the day, is that now MCMs don't help. In fact, MCMs probably make it harder, which is a little unfortunate. Now, MCM itself kind of sucked, but people have been questioning whether this is going to end up happening to a lot of other MCMs. And I'm going to say yes, this will end up definitely happening to other MCMs, especially in the future, and especially as this sort of media ends up growing in size. Now, as Machinima ended up growing, other kind of situations ended up happening to where it's like, oh, let's say Rooster Teeth, is that another one? I don't know these content creators. I'm terrible for this topic apparently, but a lot of these other businesses like Rooster Teeth, for example, they ended up kind of going into their own sort of thing, and even though they were on their own individual channel, they ended up becoming an MCM in their own business, but without ended up being the MCM situation. And that's kind of where all these companies are going. They're going into big groups and big things like Normal Boots, I think, is another one that I know about. Man, I should really follow more YouTube stuff. And so that's kind of where these sorts of things are going. So if you're still with an official MCM, chances are this could end up happening in the future. And I think this is going to become a more prevalent issue, especially as YouTube, quote unquote, censorship has been getting worse and worse, and their kind of restrictions have been getting higher and higher. YouTube has a lot of stuff that they end up hosting, but how long are they actually going to host it for? And it kind of goes down to it that a lot of people are really concerned about the preservation of this type of stuff. And this is why people care. People don't care because of Machinima itself. Machinima sucked. It locked a lot of creators into contracts and tried to make it so they could never leave. It ended up causing a lot of pain for a lot of people. Ended up going into like financial situations. They weren't paying people for the work they were doing. So yeah, in general, I can't play Shadow on this level? Oh, that's disappointing. I wanted to play as Shadow. I can play Shadow on this level. So yeah, Machinima itself just sucked. It did a lot of shady things, especially for back in the day. It got away with it because it was one of the first MCMs that really ended up allowing people. They, like, their business model was, we'll have a few creators that end up doing really well, and then we'll have a bunch of other people that get us some pennies, and we just won't do anything for them. And that's kind of what ended up happening. And that just kind of made Machinima suck. Just in a complete general sense, Machinima was just a terrible MCM to be with. But a lot of people still were, because that's just what they were with, and those contracts were hard to break out of. Now, fortunately, now it's shut down, so you ain't got to worry about those contracts, so you're probably in the clear now. But still, it's an unfortunate reality that a lot of this online creation stuff isn't going to last forever. So if you are in the business of online content creation, or you are a fan of it, try to back stuff up. Stuff that you see that you like, back it up. You know, if you can, obviously. You know, if you're not somebody who can't... I fucked that up. If you're somebody who can't back stuff up, obviously don't go out of your way. Like, don't spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars so that you can back up stuff. But, you know, people that have the availability of it, if you're a huge fan, you want to do something for the community, make sure to back stuff up. Because a lot of this large content creation stuff, it's going to get lost forever eventually. And so make sure that you're able to actually go back to it and be a hero, I guess. And if you are actually a creator yourself, make sure to back up your own stuff. Try to end up having it as backed up as possible. I have multiple backups of all my stuff. I have a physical backup for the best I possibly can. Physical backups are really expensive, so I have only the newest stuff backed up. But I do have online backups and stuff like that. I have an Amazon account, and then I have like my Google account and stuff like that. So I have multiple backups of this stuff. So if I wanted to be like, oh, hey, you know, all my stuff on YouTube's gone, I can end up uploading it to, say, Twitch, which is something I'm doing now. So yeah, just watch out for this type of stuff. And when it comes down to it, this is just an unfortunate acquisition, but eventually it was going to happen to Machinima regardless. This is not one of those cases where Machinima is operating perfectly and then Otter Media is just the devil and shutting it down. Machinima was already having troubles. They were going to shut down eventually. Otter Media just sped it up a little bit, which is just, you know, unfortunate timing. I would have liked a little bit of a heads up, I think. It would have been nice for literally everyone, but that's the end of it. Machinima's no more, which is kind of a weird thing to say. Now we can actually use it to actually talk about Machinima, which is, you know, in-game animation video stuff, which was good. That was cool. That was when the word Machinima actually meant something good. And then Machinima's like, hey, we're just going to make an entire channel and trademark Machinima, and then just make it terrible for everyone. So now whenever people think of Machinima, they think of restrictive contracts and ruining people's lives. That's unfortunate. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe for content like this one. And of course, if you like my styles of content, you can check out my website at michaelbstanich.com. If you'd like to, you know, talk about this type of stuff, that was a terrible way to segue into comments. But if you have comments about the situation, maybe you are a long follower of Machinima and end up missing details, you can end up leaving those in the comments as well. And you can end up having a remorse or stuff like that in the comments. I don't necessarily know what you would say about this. Obviously, if you want to continue the discussion outside of YouTube, you can end up checking out our gaming Discord called the Broken Chat Box. I'm currently working on an overhaul. Once I end up releasing my prototype for Akibashi, that will end up going into effect. So we'll have a whole overhaul for the Broken Chat Box, and we'll have a bunch of news stories and stuff like that will be constantly uploaded and things like that. Or not uploaded, but, you know, posted and things like that. So we're going to try and make it like an active community, which will be a thing that's kind of an active thing going on, because we've kind of failed over the last year and a half that we've ended up running it. So yeah, we're going to actually try this time, guys. So yeah, that'll be a cool community to end up being a part of. So if you want active news stories that I'm not covering on the channel and stuff like that, you can end up checking that out. So if I see news stories, I'll post them on there. And of course, I'll end up having stuff for my game development stuff. So if you're wondering, I am working currently on a prototype for a game called Akibashi, which is a rhythm game. And yeah, I'm really excited for it. The announcement's not out at the time of recording, but it will be out in the next week or two, hopefully. Hopefully I can get it out by the end of the month. That's the goal, at least. I want to have it playable, and I want to have the custom parsing system done. That's completely unrelated to anything that we're talking about. Anyways, like I said, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'm going to go back to working on that prototype. God, it is wearing me out. It's so much work.